Let's keep that conversation going now with the Shadow Industrial Relations Minister, Tim Wilson. Good to see you this morning, Tim. So what's your argument going to be tomorrow and this week?
Well, I'm going to save that for the party room, but one of the things I am going to be very clear about is that we should be setting sovereign targets that work for Australia. One of the most bizarre things that has happened in the past week is that people seem comfortable with the idea that we should abandon sovereign targets for Australia and choose globalist targets, like saying we should prioritise international treaties or OECD averages over targets that Australians decide for our country. I'm in the sovereign camp. I believe in targets we set for our national interest, not deferring to international institutions or globalist standards.
So that sounds like Paris. What would you prefer, Paris or net zero?
Well, this is what I said. It makes more sense to me that we set sovereign targets like net zero, that we control, we define, and then we go on and develop a plan on how to implement on liberal principles, exactly as Angus Taylor said, than saying that we're going to turn around to Paris or the OECD averages. I find the idea that we would outsource to a globalist standard like the average of OECD emissions, frankly, bizarre. And I don't really see that that's a tolerable policy.
So do you think that there needs to be a date set in stone?
Well, I've written previously that when we adopted net zero by 2050 and 2021, it was because we had a plan about how we were going to get there. It was built on things like the role of green hydrogen. Since then, green hydrogen has collapsed. So we need to be honest about what's achievable and with what time frame. So I'm understand why there needs to be a revisiting of the time frame, but has to be towards an intent of decarbonisation and towards a bigger objective. What
does this mean for Goldstein, Tim? How are you going to sell that to Goldstein for the next election?
Well, ultimately, it will come down to the policy put forward. But at the end, I'm going to benchmark these things against my record. You know, the last time I was in office, fact. We adopted a net zero target. Fact. I established an entirely new renewable energy industry. Fact. Emissions went down in comparison to the Climate 200 candidate. Fact. They broke their promise on emissions. Fact. They went on and voted for new coal and gas subsidies. Fact. Emissions rose. So there's a clear record of delivery there. The question is whether we can come to a clear policy position that we can take forward to show both intent and delivery.
Okay. I don't know if you caught it, but I spoke to Keith Wallahan, who lost his seat of Menzies at the last federal election, and this is what he had to say if net zero was abandoned. Let's just run this.
I hope that those that are in the room are turning their minds to seats like mine, because when you look at what happened in the last two elections, the Liberal Party lost 33 seats and 26 of those were in urban areas. I have great respect for the National Party, not only in their political success, but as people. They're decent people. But they're not responsible for winning back those urban seats. The Liberal Party is. So the Liberal Party has to think very carefully, are the decisions they're going to make in the next few days ones that will be read out on panels like this on election night in 2028 saying, oh, we got that wrong.
What are your thoughts on that, Tim?
Well, I agree completely with Keith. I mean, I'm currently the only in-urban Liberal in the entire Commonwealth of Australia. Tragically, I wish Keith was still the federal member for Menzies. He's certainly a much better member than the current one. And we need to be selling a clear, bold, confident, optimistic Liberal vision for those communities so that we can win them back. And that's about building energy abundance. It's about how we're going to build the future of the Australian economy, and it's one built on hope. But we need a compelling vision that we're going to sell. And that comes down to one thing, leadership. And that's what I'm looking for out of this next few days, leadership, because that's going to be the difference between whether we get through this debate or not. And that's one of the things that I'm concerned about at the moment.
Is that a warning to the leader, Susan Lee?
I've said consistently I'm looking for leadership because that's the way through this debate. And it's very important that people step up, they rise to the challenge, because we've got to take the whole of Australia forward together. Because that's the basis that we're going to be successful as a political movement and define ourselves for the 21st century.
Is she the right leader to go forward for the Liberal Party?
Well, as I've said already, that's what I'm looking for in the next coming days, but it's very clear to me that we need clear leadership to drive through this conversation. It's up to all of us to do that. And that's certainly the approach I'm going to be taking to make sure that we get through this conversation.
That doesn't sound like a key endorsement.
No, I'm happy to endorse the leader. That's not the issue. What I'm saying is it's up to all of us to be part of that solution. If we're just going to break into tribal parts without any acknowledgement of the responsibility we hold to each other, we are going to find ourselves boxed into a very difficult position.
Which would be?
Well, one where we can't come to a common agreement about how we're going to take the party forward together to actually govern the country. I'm not in politics because I want Labor and the left and the Greens or anyone else to win. I want to be in a position where we can govern the country, define its future so we can have a liberal democratic future that builds Australia, builds its future, and the next generation of Australians can look to the out to the horizon with confidence and hope, because that's the fulfilment of the Liberal vision.
Is there a coalition future?
Well, absolutely there is, working with the Liberal Party, but it has to be one that brings together both rural and regional Australia, the cities, and it has to be one focused on defining Australia's future, built off that which is mined and grown, that which is manufactured, and, of course, the services economy that dominates our capital cities.
So there would have to be concessions made by the Nationals?
I wouldn't look at it as part of concessions. I'd look at it as part of how we're going to define the future together, and us being practical, sensible, and how we're going to take the country, how rural and regional areas work with cities, as it is about cities working with rural and regional areas.
All right, it is a big week ahead indeed. Tim Wilson, always good to have you with us, though. We'll chat to you again soon. Well, let's go to the US President Donald Trump.